Okay. Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Lamark Leadership Series. Today is our episode number 5, I think. And Lamark Leadership Series, really, we started this when COVID hit, and we've been talking about having something like this up and running, I think, for the last several months. And COVID kind of became an opportunity for us to say, how do we come together both internally at Lamark as an organization, but also leveraging the thought leadership of so many great leaders across various different domains and industries. And so today we're grateful to have Kim and Robin from IFCJ, International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. And what we really want to focus on today is managing a nonprofit organization in the midst of a crisis. COVID is a lifetime event for a lot of us. And one thing that's very clear is we're all in this together, and a lot of the learnings that we're getting from for-profit organizations in travel and lead generation and e-commerce and retail and beyond are directly transferable to stuff we're seeing in nonprofits and so on. So today, what we're going to really focus on is first tap into their headspace on what happened when COVID hit. We're then going to dive into kind of the current state of affairs. We're 2.5 months or so into this thing. How are they kind of managing the organization and the fellowship now? Talk a little bit about stories that can really drive the message home, and then really the future, right? So 3, 6, 12-month kind of roadmap and planning, and where they are and where they're heading. A couple of topics that I'm particularly interested in is how the two of you are thinking about the future of the workplace, particularly around managing a large team that's going to be, that's going to be remote for a certain period of time, and what the phase-based kind of opportunity looks like, especially as things turn back on. So today we have Robin, Kim from IFCJ, and we also have Bryan Shetsky from Lamark, and then myself, Faheem. So let's dive right in. Robin, you're the Chief Operating Officer. I'd love for you to do a quick intro on yourself, and then Kim will work our way to you.
Sure. Thank you, Faheem. So I am the Global Chief Operating Officer for the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. I've been with the organization for about 2.5 years now. I was hired in as actually the Vice President of Integrated Fundraising and Marketing, and then took on the Global Chief Operating Officer role last September. I oversee the Chicago operations, but I'm also very involved with the Israel office and the Canadian office as well. Prior to joining IFCJ, I was with Save the Children for 11 years, where I worked in mass market fundraising for all of my time there. And then prior to that, I was in the for-profit world, where I worked for CBS Sportsline, and not to date myself too much, but when Blockbuster existed, I worked at the headquarters, and Bryan knows this, being in Florida, at their headquarters down in Fort Lauderdale, and worked in their corporate development department there.
Awesome. Thank you.
I missed Blockbuster Video, by the way.
So do I. That was a staple.
Me too.
That was like the weekend plan.
Yeah.
Circa mid-90s. Go by, pick something up, box a bunch of Crunch.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Every Friday night, we would look forward to going to pick up, 1 or 2 different movies. Fun times, and put it in our VHS. You remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. Don't forget to rewind.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Kim, I'd love for you to do a quick intro on yourself.
Sure. My name is Kim Bersin. I'm the Senior Director of Integrated Fundraising and Marketing at the Fellowship. I'm coming up on my decade anniversary with the Fellowship, and I've seen a lot of different sides of the Fellowship, but really found my home in fundraising and marketing. I always say that I have my dream job, because at the end of the day, I know that no matter what we do, whether you're working in the mailroom, whether you're in the office of the president, whether you're fundraising or, doing office administration, you are helping to feed and clothe people at the end of the day. And I really love connecting our good-hearted supporters and donors and family members to our mission and to the people that we serve. So I have the immense pleasure of telling stories, of helping people know who we are and understand who we are. And I'm just really grateful to be here with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I love that story of yours because, when NASA put man on moon, there's a famous story of someone, a news reporter interviewing a janitor saying, "What do you do here?" And he said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." And so I love that, all of us working together for the same mission and vision. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd love to sort of dive in and, early March, mid-March, we were going into this kind of pandemic scenario and complete lockdown. Talk to us a little bit about what was that initial kind of moment of like, oh boy, this is real and it's here. Talk to us a little bit about what was top of mind for you.
So I would say yes, right around that time, we were actually planning a leadership retreat. We just started our first strategic plan, and this retreat was really to kick off the implementation phase of that. And I was, checking in with the facility. Should we go? Should we do this? Our colleagues were coming in from Israel. We had folks coming in from Canada. They were kind of waiting up to the last minute. We decided to go ahead and do it. Our Israel colleagues decided to stay back. Our Canadian team did come to Illinois for the retreat. And it was a 2.5-day retreat. We finished the second day, and I was just watching the news. And when I saw the sports starting to get canceled, baseball, basketball, hockey, I knew that this was going in a very serious direction, and much more serious direction. And so we canceled the third day of the retreat. We had the leadership team get back in the office, and we called an all-staff meeting that morning, and we instituted our remote working immediately. That was a Friday, so people had an opportunity to come in, get whatever stuff that they needed to get. We allowed them, some additional folks to come in on Monday that couldn't make it in on Friday to do that. Fortunately, we had already had a business continuity plan in place, and we were able to effectively pull the trigger on that plan and to work quickly and mobilize quickly. Also, it was interesting, the week before, I had told the leadership team that we were going to do a mock work from home, not knowing that was actually going to be real. And I'm so glad I did that, because I saw everyone's faces kind of go, yeah, our plan's ready, but maybe not exactly every loose detail was tied up. And so it got everybody, I think, a little bit of a jump start, especially getting some laptops ordered and sourcing some equipment. So that was actually, I think, a really a good thing that I didn't realize, not being able to see what the future was going to hold, but the fact that we were going to call this mock work from home exercise was really beneficial, because, like I said, I felt like it gave everyone a head start. And so we were able to kind of immediately go into our remote work environment. Certainly, it went very smoothly, not to say that there weren't a lot of stress in those, first 2 weeks, as people were trying to figure out all the operations and getting things, getting our new processes in place. But we were very fortunate that, one, most of our entire workforce has the capability to work from home. I think we only had 2 folks that really cannot do their job from home. So we're just a very fortunate position, because we know there's a lot of businesses out there that aren't as fortunate as we are. And then the second piece is, we also are a humanitarian organization that responds to crisis in Israel and in the former Soviet Union. So we had to also institute our second, and that was our ERAP, what we call our Emergency Response Action Plan. So we called ERAP, and that just kind of sets off a series of actions that the team has to take regarding our fundraising and our response to the crisis on the ground. So working closely with our colleagues in Israel to figure out how we were going to help those in most need, specifically the elderly, which is core group that we focus on even during quote, normal times. But we knew were especially vulnerable during the COVID crisis. So we had kind of a double plan, two plans that we were initiating at the same time, and team did a fabulous job, rose to the occasion. Personally had to make sure, obviously, the safety and well-being of our employees were in place. We also had to, knowing the economic impact of all this, implement cost containment measures. So we immediately implemented a hiring freeze. We asked all the teams to look at their budgets and cut costs at least by 10% if it wasn't related to fundraising or any revenue generating activities. We forego merit increases for all management and above, and really just wanted to be very measured in our approach, as we had no idea how our donors were going to respond during this crisis, and knowing that there was going to be significant, obviously, economic impact to the economy. And then we also had to really make sure that we provided support to our employees during this change, as people were dealing, obviously, with their personal children being home, out of school. Everyone's situation was unique, and it added just this incredible layer of pressure on a lot of working moms and dads who now had to juggle multiple responsibilities. So we wanted to make sure that we were providing an environment that was supportive, understanding, flexible, and made everyone understand. Really, what I said to everyone is, do your best. And whatever your best is for that day, it's going to be good enough. And so if there's days that you need to focus more on your family, you do that. There are days that you can focus more on work, that's great. But my expectation is, under this environment, and I know this team and I know them well, and I know how committed and dedicated, that I know that every day they'll do their best, and whatever that is, it will be great. And we've done, I'm just so proud of the team and how they've been able to rise to the occasion during all of this. And we also wanted to support our donors. We saw a huge influx of prayer requests coming in to our donor services team. And so we did some really great initiatives around that. And I'll let Kim speak to those, but they've been really successful. And I think we were able to give back to our donors who have given so generously for so many years, but even more so during this crisis. And we just wanted to really create that community, that feeling of a ministry, and really have share that bond with them during this time. And so we were really proud of the work that we did to mobilize the team to set up some really great opportunities to bring every one of us together. Everyone from Yael, our president and CEO, our chairman of the board, Bishop Lanier, to our donors, to staff. It's just been incredible. And our partners like Lamark, who have done a fabulous job supporting us through all of this, and really helping us with all of our efforts. So we're really in an incredibly blessed position, and I don't take that for granted. I see every day how many businesses and organizations are struggling or closing their doors, and in the nonprofit world, where there's been massive layoffs, and other organizations who have not been so fortunate. And I don't take that for granted at all. And I know how lucky and how blessed we are, and always want to keep that in top of mind. It's something that none of us can take for granted. So really proud of the team.
I want to agree with Robin on the support that the fellowship provided its staff. It was actually a really pivotal moment. Probably a week in, we were on a really large call because we were in an emergency situation. And at that time, we connect all the offices. We meet daily. We talk about what's happening on the field. We talk about how we're promoting it, fundraising and marketing. And someone had a child interrupt them, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And our president and CEO, Yael Etten, said, "Hold up, like, at this point, no one has to apologize for anything that happens in your life in the background. Don't apologize for kids. Don't apologize for animals. Don't apologize for anything. This is a new normal, and it's okay. And it's okay that you have lives going on around you." And I think especially since that was such a wide call. I mean, it had, I don't know, 100 people plus on it from the company, and everybody was like, okay, we can make this work. We're in this together. And even our president and CEO is saying it's okay. But this was definitely a very different emergency than we've ever had before. We are a humanitarian organization, so we know how to do emergency fundraising. We often help our people in our project areas when there's war, when they're victims of terror and things like that. But this was the first time that what our beneficiaries were facing, our donors were also facing at the same time. And so this was very different. I'm usually very on top of emergency mode. I know exactly what we need to do. I know exactly how we need to message it, what the communications are, and how to direct it. But this time we had to take a step back and say, number one, are we caring for our staff? Number two, are we caring for our recipients in the right way and changing our programming so that they're safe and secure? And number three, are we caring for our donors who are facing this exact same crisis? And that's where we were able to really give back to our community in so many ways by doing, phone prayer services where tens of thousands of people joined us, where we did digital events where we were fasting and praying together and having pastors connecting with them and leading them through that experience, which was probably the most beautiful donor experience I've ever had in my 10 years. And so many other ways where we provided things to do at home with your kids, things to do just for yourself. We made word searches. I mean, just down to the little things that we try to do to delight our donors and help them get through this tough time. And I really think that it deepened our relationship with our donors in such a critical, crucial way. And I'm just blown away by the extraordinary support, by the extraordinary work that we did as a staff, that we continue to do, how we change our programming, how we're keeping elderly Holocaust survivors safe. I think about one of our recipients, Miriam, who has cancer. She's 87. She survived the Holocaust, and now she's living her last years in sickness. She's ill. She will only go out to get her cancer treatments, and that is it, because she is obviously more at risk than others at this virus. It threatens her life. And normally we would give her a food card to help her financially, because she can't afford food, especially with her medical care that she pays for. And she would go to the store and she would pick out the groceries herself. But we were able to very quickly change our programming so that we could provide nutritious food boxes instead, so that they didn't have to go to the grocery store. They didn't have to face shortages. They didn't have to go out in a place that would threaten their lives and expose them. And instead of bringing it inside, we drop it at the door. We have all of our masks on and all of our protective clothing. And we were able to very quickly change all of our programming, plus add an additional 15,000 recipients in Israel. And that's on top of expanding our help in the former Soviet Union as well. So this was just an extraordinary effort from start to finish. Our donors showed up in ways that give me goosebumps. Like they're tithing off of their stimulus checks, or they're giving their entire stimulus checks because they don't want to give up helping someone else. And the generosity during this time has been amazing. I just feel so lucky to be part of this group and part of connecting the people that we love and serve here that are helping people they've never met across the ocean. So even though it's been a very difficult time and we had to get used to a lot of new things, not seeing each other, we're a fellowship family, that was really hard in the beginning. Plus being in emergency mode, that was very difficult. All of it was very stressful at an emotional level, but it was just one for the books to really look back and be grateful and count how many blessings we had during this time.
Absolutely. Kim, thank you for sharing. I think, it's in moments of hardship that we feel like we're one family, we're all in this together. And I think that, suffice to say, but COVID would likely, at least for now, will go down as the most documented event of all time. And so being able to hear these stories is powerful. So thank you for sharing. We're almost 2.5 months into this thing. And, you know, the first 2 weeks, Bryan, I'd love for you to share kind of the first kind of 2 to 3 weeks, how like what was top of mind for you, you know, running the organization of almost, you know, 50, 60 people or so. And then let's talk a little bit about kind of our state of affairs now.
Sure.
Yeah.
I had one question really quick though. Jump in if you don't mind.
Yeah.
To Kim's point though, like being a global organization, like we have, you know, some international clients, but we do our work here, and you guys have offices across the world. And this pandemic hit the whole country and the whole world at the same time. And so like to imagine how to coordinate efforts, like if it was one thing like a hurricane relief or like a earthquake relief or something that happened or some horrible event in one country, you can like centralize your help. But you guys had calls from everywhere. So I don't want to take over Faheem's question, but I wanted to ask that while you were talking, you know, because it was hard enough for us of 2 offices in Florida and Texas of 100-ish people to deal with that component, like globally needing, where do you put the dollars and donations? Where do you help people who are facing COVID? Like, how do you make those decisions? So sorry, I didn't want to jump in, but Faheem, you rolled in, but I was like, I have a really good one.
No, that's an excellent question. You know what? I'm now curious. Yes, please share.
That's what was going through my head when you were talking. I was like, oh, man, so many things to coordinate. And Robin, your point before about the work remote across all these offices. So like, how do you, those are hard decisions. It makes my decisions seem very trivial. So
Yeah. So it's, well, the way that we're structured, we have a COO that heads up the Israel office, and that really is our country office where we do a significant amount of all of our programming comes out of that, even if we're doing programming in FSU, the former Soviet Union, Ukraine, that is all kind of decided in the Israel office. And then our Canadian office is also headed there's a executive director who runs that. What was great about then the positive thing that came about this crisis, it was a unifying event that brought, I think, our offices closer together and working more in a way that we had not worked. So it was definitely a positive that came out of that, because as Kim mentioned, we were on the phone every single day together in the first weeks. And so we really relied on, we don't, as Bryan, you're aware, we don't implement programs in the United States. We just do, we mostly, most of our funds are in Israel or the former Soviet Union. And so we really rely on the expertise of the Israel office and the program staff to kind of, they were inundated with requests, as you can imagine, for help and for many funding needs. And so they had to kind of sort through all of the hundreds of requests that were coming in daily and then make a decision about what would be the most effective and impactful use of our funds and reach the most amount of people, and also be within our kind of what is our core competency on who we serve, and that is definitely the elderly. And so it required, we were able to partner with another organization in Israel that was, as Kim mentioned, that allowed us to add another 15,000 recipients, elderly, to receive food boxes. The hospitals, we established a fund immediately right out of the gate. We said $5 million is our fund to address COVID. We increased it after that by almost another, I think it was another $1 million to expand our programming. But it's really done through a vetting process in the Israel staff, and they have these relationships. They have long-standing relationships and partnerships that they've developed over years of who they know are good partners to work with. And then our own staff, because that's the other thing that was so complicated. A lot of the work we do, we have a massive volunteer network in Israel that does, for example, home visits that either if they bring a food box, they check on, do wellness checks. with the situation not endangering the worker or the elderly, this increased isolation for elderly. I mean, it's one of those unseen, I think, tragedies that happen with elderly that is difficult to, you can see when someone's hungry and you give them a box, but what do you do? Loneliness is a really serious issue. And this once a week visit from a healthcare worker is really adds as much nourishment, I think, as someone giving someone a meal to somebody. So what they did is they were able to mobilize 8,000 volunteers. No, not 8,000 volunteers. I'm sorry. Hundreds of volunteers who made over 8,000 calls to elderly to just to do a wellness check, to have a conversation, to create that human contact. So many of these elderly are living alone with no family, no one to really connect with, and we're really that lifeline to the outer world. And so the creativity of being able to utilize technology to get on the phones and kind of continue that work in a different element, in a different environment, but still, I think, very impactful as well. And so that's kind of how it's determined. It's really, we rely on the expertise. We have a phenomenal staff in Israel, ton of years and years of experience that really make those decisions on, they share those decisions with us here in Chicago, and we approve them, but we really rely on their expertise because they're on the ground and they know best. I hope that answers your question, Bryan.
Yeah, I just, the offices across the road then, but all the areas of need, like everyone's like raising their hand, rightfully so, we need help. And it's like, how do you pick and choose where it goes? There's finite resources and, timely decisions. And then being that a lot of the care and support is for elderly, who's the most impacted by this disease and virus, and to your point earlier, like people are losing a lot of really valuable time that are older. Even I think of some of my family members that I can't see. So it's like those decisions are like, we're talking about business, but we're talking about life and potentially death beyond, outside of COVID. You guys are helping save lives in general with food programs and things like that, medical care. And now you have this pandemic globally, and it's like there's like fires popping up everywhere, so to speak. And like, where do you go first? How do you make those decisions? And that's just an incredible amount of like importance to the work you guys do, which is why we love working with you so much. Because usually, I think I said this in one of our meetings, Kim, it was like usually when we get high fives for driving more revenue, for you guys it's like more support to people who need it. So it's like even double rewarding. Like, yeah, we're bringing wins to a business, which helps with hiring and growing a company. We're doing good there. But this is a whole other level where every dollar we raise and every percent improvement and return goes directly to helping more people, which is ultimately the most rewarding work we could do. So it's like, and now flip side of that, now it's like, how do you pick and choose who gets help? Just such a hard decision, man.
Well, you just keep helping us raise the money, and then we'll help more and more and more and more people.
We're all in, you know that.
And that is the sad reality. There's a lot of, for everyone we said, yes, we can help and fund and grant additional funding for programs. There's so many organizations we had to say no to as well. And so, and that's, my mission, Kim's mission, is to keep raising money so that we can keep helping and reaching more people and impacting more lives, not only during COVID, but even outside of COVID. So those are hard, and I would not have want to be a Hebrew word for COO is called a mankal, and so our mankal in the Israel office, I would not have wanted to be in his position, because I'm sure it was really hard to turn away and say no, but there were so many, there were only so many dollars, and so those hard decisions had to be made.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I relate it to like one geography. That's the thing. It's like, oh, there's a really bad thing happening in this area. It's like everywhere. So
It's ubiquitous, no doubt. I'd love to actually dig into some of these notes here. I mean, Kim, you mentioned staff, donors, recipients. Let's take it kind of bite-sized across the board. Talk to us a little bit about the plan now, as we're 2.5 months into this thing. Talk to us a little bit about managing a remote kind of organization. How are you setting goals and targets for your kind of individual departments and teams? How are you really creating a culture of high performance? So talk to us a little bit about that.
I'll say that right off the bat, Robin told all of the senior leadership, we have meetings with our direct reports or our teams every single day. When we started going, it didn't have to have a complicated agenda. It's how are you doing personally? How are you doing remote? Do you need more equipment? Is everything working? Do you need any assistance? Do you need any help? How are you adjusting? And just checking in to make sure that nobody felt alone, everyone felt supported, and that we made the time for our teams. Because we were in emergency mode, we're going up a million miles a minute. There's more work than there are hands during those times. And so that was just critical in making sure that we were communicating to our teams. But we also put in a lot of virtual events with our full staff, fun things like bingo and happy hours and things like that, both individually on teams, but also as an organization to keep connected. Because one of the things that's most special about the fellowship, and I think Bryan knows this and probably feels it on the Lamark side, is that we're a fellowship family. It's something that comes up all the time. We don't just call our donors the fellowship family. We call our staff the fellowship family. We feel very connected to one another. It is like a second family. One of the best things about working at the fellowship is who you get to work with, and we see our partners that way too. Bryan's brother Etten works with us, and he is like our brother now. He's very connected with my team and with us. And so we wanted to keep that same kind of connection and make sure that people were okay. So we did a lot of things like that. HR did an amazing job with supporting. They would just be making random calls to each staff member, checking in with them, seeing how they were doing, sending out resources, planning events, et cetera, just to stay connected. And I think that's kind of the baseline. Make sure everybody has what they need on an emotional level, on a work level, et cetera, and then you build upon that. And this is where it got more difficult, because we were just launching a 5-year strategic plans with these very lofty goals and these aggressive timelines, and then a global pandemic happened. And we had to say, halt on that and go do all of the emergency fundraising and make all these decisions and do all of this increased work. And now we're trying to get back into that flow of accomplishing the strategic plan bit by bit. And so there's a lot of project managing going on to make sure we're staying connected, that everything's moving and going along, and a lot of increased communication. I think it was no longer good enough to communicate the way we communicated in the past. When we're remote like this and we don't see each other all the time, not everybody's video isn't on, you're not seeing that facial connection. You might not even, you don't have that opportunity to just say, oh, hey, Robin, I just heard this, or someone came to talk to me about this. You don't have that 5 seconds in the kitchen or 5 seconds in the bathroom to share what just happened. It's really important to increase your communication, and it became really clear really fast, especially on my team, that I had to up communication as much as possible. And I felt like I was over communicating, but that was when it hit the right level. So I think we just had to realize where people were at and what the new normals were, and adjust as much as possible and be as flexible as possible, while still keeping people accountable and making sure that we're hitting our goals, hitting our targets. And thank God our donors responded, and we didn't have the added stress of being down in revenue. We only grew, and that for me is like a baseline hierarchical need, that we are growing, and that our donors are responding, and that we're inspiring our donors, and then everything else comes after that. But thank God we didn't have that stressor. but it did just take a lot of intentionality, if that's a word, with our teams to make sure that we were increasing everything than we would have in the office.
Yeah. You know, I love that you share that, Kim. I think some of the biggest challenges that I think we, certainly Bryan and I talk about this is, we want the team to see eye to eye the way we see eye to eye, right? On our mission, our vision. I get an enormous amount of energy from seeing other people succeed. It's weird. Like and I feel that if they succeed and through their success, we become successful, right? Like it's this like osmosis kind of feel.
Me too.
Yeah.
We're like, soul brother and sister. I feel that exact same way.
There you go. We see eye to eye, and I, truly, and I think in the midst of all of this, as leaders, having empathy for the team, giving them comfort, knowing that we're in this together, but also still having expectations. I think there's some people I've spoken to, they leaned a bit on the opposite end of too much flexibility. And I think that led to the teams missing targets, things of that sort. I think there's certainly a delicate balance between providing the freedom and flexibility. I think the concept that we talk a lot about is work-life integration instead of work-life balance, because work-life balance is really a thing. If we worked at a manufacturing facility, it's kind of an 8 to 5, when you're home, you're done. Work-life integration is like, look, at 3 p.m., you got to go pick up your kid from school. Like, go do that. 7 p.m., you got soccer thing, go do that. But like from 9 to 11, 9 to whatever, like you're finding ways to ensure that you're driving value and results without feeling like you're sort of, because as knowledge workers, as information workers, our goal is to be as objective as possible and to drive as great results as possible, instead of like, we're not time servers, right? The time serving nature of 9 to 5 will likely, in the new world order of work from anywhere, will be reevaluated. And so creating that environment is critical. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think it sounds like, I think the net takeaway for our listeners is communicate and then communicate more, and make sure that things don't get lost in translation, that we're documenting, that we're aligned, and we're getting confirmation from all sides of the aisle. So I appreciate you sharing that. Robin, let's talk a little bit about recipients and kind of the global impact that the fellowship is having. I'd love for you to share kind of, we're almost 70 days or so into this thing. What are some stories and examples that you can share? And Kim, I'd love for you to share a few as well.
I think the stories I would share would be one that Yael, who went out to meet with deliver a food box to one of the elderly, and she said, it was so, I guess, surreal for her, because when she went to go deliver the box, and normally when she would do that and enter a home, the recipient would be, beaming with smiles and so happy to see her and so excited. And she would sit with them and put her arm around them and give a hug. And she said that she could just feel the fear in her, and that the best thing for her to do at that moment was just to leave. And it just was I think for me, it just really just underscored how this pandemic has kind of impacted so greatly our ability as humans to give empathy, to be able to, being barred from human touch, especially from someone that has probably rarely sees someone once a week. And it was sad. I mean, it was sad in the sense that, yes, we're able to, good in the sense we were able to give her some essential needs as far as being able to deliver a food that she doesn't have to worry about how she's going to eat. But sad that she has to sit in as someone that's highly vulnerable. And this doesn't apply just to our beneficiaries in Israel. This is all across the world right now, that has to sit in isolation. And those stories of so many that have been sick and sadly have died from COVID that have to do it alone is heartbreaking. And that moment just really hit me in how devastating this virus is, not only from the actual physiological impact it has on the body, but the emotional impact that it is going to have, and the scars that it's going to leave on people for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So that was a moment, because I've never seen an elderly person. They welcome my experience, beaming from ear to ear with a smile, hug you, want to, give you a cup of tea, sit down with them, talk with you, because they're so desperate for companionship.
Yeah.
And that this person just couldn't have her leave soon enough because she was so scared.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Kim, if you have a story you'd like to share, but that was one that stuck out for me.
I was thinking of something quite the opposite, actually, with what Robin's talking about is an elderly woman who lives in Israel, which obviously is a developed nation, and they have a life. They know what's going on in the outside world, and even though they may need assistance and they crave that connection because they don't have family or whatever, they need companionship, but they kind of know what's going on in the world. But I'm wondering about my friend Katerina from Ukraine that I met January, right before all of this hit. And Katerina has no TV, no radio. She's in a remote village. And in that way, the risk is really low that she would contract COVID. But she would have no way to know, besides us, what precautions she should take. Because she is not clued in to the rest of the world. She has no outside connection to the rest of the world and what's happening on a global level. And from what I've heard from some friends in Ukraine, they're not taking many precautions. And they weren't taking it very seriously, and they weren't able to even be equipped to handle this, from a healthcare level. And so Katerina, we came in, and just as Robin said, she was grinning ear to ear. She couldn't believe that Americans were in her home. She's Jewish, so Israel is always important to Jewish people. And you would have thought that she'd be fawning all over Yael Eckstein, our president and CEO, because she's Israeli and she lives in Israel. But no, it was the Americans. And there's a very specific reason for that. During World War II, she was in a community where was under Nazi control. And there was this bridge where she could see that Jews were being brought to the bridge to die. It was basically a killing field. A bridge turned into a killing field. And they took Katerina and they marched her to that bridge. And she was expecting the fate of all of those that had gone before her, that she would be killed on that bridge. And in that moment, American soldiers came and rescued her and defeated the Nazis on that bridge. And so she has always wanted to say thank you to America and had no way, because she has no connection to the outside world. And so the very fact that Americans showed up into her home, she was like kissing our hands constantly. She didn't want to, she told her story, but she wanted to break and connect and hug and kiss because she was just so happy that Americans were in her home. And she kept saying, now I know why God kept me alive, so that I could thank Americans once more. I can die with a smile on my face. And she said, Americans saved me in the beginning of my life, and now Americans are saving me at the end of my life. And that the way we saved her was through food and gloves. It was in January and very cold, and the outside feels like the inside. There's no heat. There's no running water in Katerina's home. So we brought blankets and mittens and warm clothing for her, and she was just overwhelmed to the fact that she would giggle over a carton of eggs. That's just how dire the poverty is. And I just wonder about her right now, and if she's safe, and if she even knows what's going on in the world, if she even knows why the person that's bringing her a food box is now masked, is now maybe not spending as much time as she normally would, or standing back, or all of those things. And so there's kind of two sides to these stories of some of these very remote areas where they have no connection to the outside world. We are their connection. and people that are very well connected to the world, but are just not able to support themselves. But to be able to help these people in ways to keep them safe, but also to make sure to take those extraordinary measures to help them, because if we don't, nobody else will. And so we're not going to not show up with that food box. We're going to continue making the trek. When we went to see Katerina, it was 2 hours outside of the city, and then a 15-minute walk on foot because there was no road to her house. That's how remote it is. But the fellowship is committed to taking those extraordinary measures because these are extraordinary people that we serve. They're Holocaust survivors. They faced, the worst of humanity. We can't forget them now. So it's just the stories and the programming is very broad. And we serve a lot of different types of people, even though, most of them are elderly. We serve families and children too, but the largest group of recipients are elderly.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you for sharing. That's a powerful story. And the interesting thing about the work that you, Robin, and the rest of the team are doing is that there's so many of these stories, right? There's so many individualized stories and the impact is more global. So thank you for sharing. What I'd love to kind of dive into is how are these stories now connecting with the donors? And how are you, and the interesting time that we're living in is it doesn't require a lot of these stories to then move the donors. The donors get it, right? They know the impact that the fellowship is having, but help us connect the dot between the fellowship and the donors and kind of what's kind of the current ethos in the conversation.
I think our donors, like you said, they know exactly what's happening, and we are very, very, very fortunate. Like I can't express that enough. In fact, most meetings, at least one person said, wow, we're so lucky. We have the best donors in the world. But they are very intrinsically motivated. It's more than just a helping hand. For them, it's a statement of their faith, and it's part of their identity to be helpers and to share love with others and compassion with others. And in that way, we have some of the most dedicated and loyal donors in the world because they're not going to let an external force like this stop them. They're going to do extraordinary things like give their stimulus check. And of course, we didn't ask for that. We didn't suggest that. They will tithe off of their check. It just comes from their heart. So these stories, they're not unlike stories that have come before of need. And our programming has not changed. We're just changing the way we do it and increasing it. So our donors were very quick to say, yes, I will help. And something that was really so impactful was, this happened right before the Jewish holiday of Passover. And that story, I thought our president, Yael, made such a very profound connection between the lessons of Passover and what we were all facing with COVID-19. And because one of our biggest times to provide a lot of aid is during Passover, we provide extra food to help them celebrate the Passover. This was just a really important connection to be made. And she talked about how, the lessons of Passover is that God delivers his people in times of trouble. Basically, it all boils down to that. And this was our chance to help be the hands and feet of God in this moment and help deliver the people that we serve in this time of trouble. And help them, make sure that we didn't forget them. We not only say never again with our mouths, but we say it with our hands and make sure that we continue to go back day after day or month after month to these people to make sure that they have what they need so that they don't go hungry again, they don't struggle again. So I think that messaging really resonated with our donors, and they felt that how impactful that was from Yael to say, this Passover is kind of eerily similar to the one of biblical days. we're huddled up in our home, hoping that the plague will pass us over. And, you know, we were facing a new plague with COVID-19, and we were huddled with just our immediate families, hoping and praying that it would pass over us, and praying for God's deliverance. And many of the people that we serve, you know, they are Jewish, and they know those lessons from Passover. And so they were feeling that same thing, that it was eerily similar. And so our donors understood that. They knew it was an extraordinary time, and that they needed to do something about it and make sure that, you know, these people were provided for this Passover. And what was just so beautiful is, you know, a lot of our donors rally around this time right before Passover and help fund our Passover outreach, but that hasn't stopped since. And they're continuing to reach out and continuing their generosity. It didn't end with Passover. It continues because they feel so connected to the land of Israel. They feel so connected to the people of Israel. And, you know, we have so many stories to tell because the need is really dire and the need is really true.
Absolutely.
I was going to say that the Passover parallel is pretty astonishing with this. Like now we're getting, you know, these murder hornets, or even getting our own locusts. So there's like, you know, like
it just keeps going.
Yeah. Or at least the news is making it feel that way. It's an interesting timing parallel. We were talking about that, you know, when the timing was here. It's like, you know, couldn't see family. Like there was a ton of, I saw even online on Facebook, of people having like virtual seders, and like, you know, at the time we're usually with family where you necessarily may not be able to, and you are sheltered in, you are, you know, minus the blood on the door, but you're kind of, you know, staying away from everything. So it was a very interesting parallel this year. It was definitely eerie. And then they announced those hornets or whatever. I'm like, all right, this is getting nuts. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
What's next? Yeah.
It's no, and you know, I think the evolution of COVID is to be determined, right? The macro environment is so dynamic right now. I'd love to sort of transition the conversation towards kind of the future, 3, 6, 12 months, to the best of your ability. Obviously, we don't know what's ahead, but given what we know today, how are the two of you kind of thinking about the fellowship, the donor program, helping recipients, and kind of just running the logistics of this whole thing, you know, as we're looking ahead into the next 3, 6, 12 months?
Well, I would say from kind of an operations standpoint, for organizational wide, obviously, I think it's two big things, right? The unknowns are the economy. And though we have seen incredible response and commitment by our donors, I still don't think that we have fully seen the full impact of the fallout on the economy. And so that is something that I think weighs heavily on, I'm sure, many people's minds every day. And it is, I mean, we have 14.7% unemployment. Some states are even higher. That's the highest it's been since the Great Depression. Other states like Nevada, some states that are hit hard based on, you know, what their industry sector is, they have all-time record unemployment. And a lot of jobs aren't coming back and aren't going to come back for, and some that are going to come back aren't going to come back for a long time. And it's that whole supply chain. So when you look at a restaurant, yeah, it's closed, but then you think about all of the suppliers that are impacted. You see it now with the meat packing plants. You go in the store now and it's very difficult to find pork right now. They're going to have to potentially euthanize, you know, 1 million pigs because there's no way to, you know, bring them to market. And so, though we've had, and we're definitely unique and different, we have this incredible donor base that is very different coming from an organization like Save the Children that seems to be insulated from these external environments because their faith is so great. There still is the reality of what happens if the economy has to be, what happens if we go into another shutdown. So all the states are starting to reopen up. What if there's another spike again in the fall? I don't know what how the economy could survive a second shutdown. And so for me, it's not trying to be negative or pessimistic. I want to definitely hope that, I look at Florida, Bryan, and I see the positive numbers and continuing to be positive, and hope that it continues to trend that way. But what I want to do with the leadership team and an exercise that I plan on doing within the next month is what if scenarios, and really kind of doing some of this scenario planning across the board as an organization, looking at different areas. But certainly, what if our fundraising drops by 20%, 25%? What were the measures we would take? What are the steps that we need to take? It's better to have a plan than not to have a plan, hoping that you never have to use that. But I think we need to be prepared, because we don't know enough about the virus even now. You can turn on, again, as you mentioned, you can turn on any TV station. It's unfortunate it has become political. The virus has become a political football for many, but you don't know. You could have 20 doctors saying one thing on one station, another 20 doctors saying another thing on another station. You don't know if there's an agenda behind it. You don't know. We just don't know. And the doctors don't know. My daughter's roommate's father is a doctor. And I said, what is his take on all this? And he said, we don't know anything. And so that is a little unnerving at this far into the crisis. But I think that's what the mindset we have to be prepared for, because we don't know anything. We don't know really what's going to happen with the economy. We don't know what's going to happen with the virus. And so doing those what if scenarios in order to be prepared and have a plan in place, if we need to initiate that plan, I think is really important.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I think feelings are mutual in terms of the lack of certainty in terms of what's ahead into the future. But certainly, the agility, the beautiful thing about, I think, both Lamark and in this case, the fellowship is we're incredibly agile and versatile in terms of how we operate the company. And I think there's a sense of kind of a commitment and a mission to the people that we service. Because we're in the service business as well, right? We're just servicing our clients who have been doing multiple different things. So we're kind of behind the curtain. No, I appreciate you sharing that, Robin. Kim, anything that's top of mind for you as we're thinking about the next kind of 3, 6, 12 months?
I think for me, it's just, I'm just always thinking about how to be relevant with our donors and how to make sure that we're delighting them in every way that we can. And, delight in that way means not just, making them happy, but connecting with what matters to them, connecting with what they're concerned about or what they're happy about, and just remaining relevant. And so right now it's moment by moment. We produced a crisis emergency TV 2-minute spot around our, first responder aid around COVID. And now, we're kind of doing our COVID spot 2.0, because it's not, the situation in Israel is different than it was a month ago when we started running this spot. And so it's going to be a lot of flexibility and adjusting, I think, over the course of the next year. And what Robin said is so true. We're going to plan, and it's better to have the plan. And then if we have to adjust and be flexible, we'll adjust and be flexible. But what I do know, and what I'm confident in is that the fellowship will continue to be flexible on all accounts for our staff, in our programming, and for our donors. And so, we had a lot of campaigns planned for May. None of them happened because this happened instead. We had that event that I talked about, the Fellowship Fast, a digital Facebook event, planned for May, but we planned it way before a global pandemic and totally trashed everything to really respond to what the donors needed then on May 7th. And so it's going to be a lot of flexibility that we'll plan. We'll make sure that everybody's taken care of and all of those groups of people that we've been talking about, but then we're just going to have to trash the plan if something changes, and adjust and use our best guesses sometimes. You know, when Robin first gathered the leadership at that leadership retreat and said, we need to go home early and let everybody work from home, I was like, what? Because I don't follow sports, so I didn't know that stuff about, you know, the sports stopping, and I can't even talk about it eloquently because I don't know anything about sports. And I was like, oh wow, this is really like, we're doing a lot here. That's crazy. And my husband, who also works for the fellowship, is like, I don't think we need to do that. And then a week later, he was like, they were so right. Robin was so right. And so we need to make plans. We need to make our best guesses and just put our best foot forward for our donors, for our staff, for our recipients, and keep, I mean, I'm so grateful that the fellowship has committed this additional aid through the rest of the year, because it's not just going to affect right now or the next few weeks. It's going to affect people for the rest of the year, or maybe even longer. But I think that's just our number one thing, is just to remain flexible and, you know, fill the needs of the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bryan, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, no, me and Kim spoke about this on one of our catch-ups about being relevant and making sure people understand the why, you know, and what we do, especially when it comes to charitable causes, and why they connect with these causes, and why it's important to support great organizations like the Fellowship. I know I support outside of Lamark also, because I believe in the mission and what they're doing, and the people that need help, and how they're really putting their money to work, which was one thing when I first met with Robin years ago now, and then Kim. It was like, well, how much, you know, that actually goes, and the percentage of money that actually goes to work is spectacular. I mean, it was really strong, and you know, that's an organization that wants to make an impact. So, you know, I think as far as uncertainty, things are going to change. This virus isn't going anywhere in the interim, so I think you have to learn to live in the new normal, and being prepared makes a lot of sense, and you got to be agile and flexible on those things for sure. So I think a lot of good insights. Just as a global takeaway, I think, you know, we've truly enjoyed working with the Fellowship, and Robin and Kim have just been amazing partners, and what we've been able to do in a few years' time, and where we are now, and then excited about where we're going to be in a few years' time from here, and how we continue to grow. Just really appreciate the partnership and the family style relationship we have. You guys are family. We love you guys, like, truly, and you know, the growing collective impact we're doing together, and how we're bringing wins to the world and helping others, and the work that you guys do, the tireless work that you do. For anyone watching this, don't generally do it, but please go to ifcj.org. First time I ever made a plug, because I believe in it. So it's not a plug, it's true. Go to the website, learn about this organization and the work that this amazing group of people are doing, and how they're helping millions of people, and something we're really passionate about, and we're proud to be your partner, and we appreciate all that you do, not just for us, but for everyone. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bryan.
All right, thanks for that. Robin and Kim, this was wonderful. Really appreciate you both taking the time. Please continue to spread the goodness in the world that the world desperately needs. You know, we'll certainly be connecting offline. So I appreciate the partnership as well, and onwards and upwards.
Yes, the work is not done. So we'll talk to you at the next call.
Right.
Absolutely. Thank you both. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Guys.
Bye.
Bye.